can read and
This begins CSCI201, Wednesday, January 15th, 2020.
Is Professor Miller here? No! It's a game design club.
Okay, you can.
Jeffrey. Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Wait, I will talk about.
Is it my
Hello. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Let me put it here. Hi, good morning. My name is Reem, and I'm one of your TAs. I will be covering the lecture today with the help of Emily and Jack. But before we start, someone here wants to make an announcement.
Yeah.
So you can talk to the mic.
I can do without the mic, but hello everyone. I'm from a club called Open Alpha. It's a game design club. I know it's early, both in the semester and in the morning, to be yelling at you guys to get involved, but get involved! It's going to be super fun. If you're interested in game design, want to put your C++ programming to use, hands-on experience, programming a game is a great way to do it. This can be a great group of people. We're having tons of social events because we really want to build a community of great developers. Do you mind if I throw up a website? Yeah. The best. So there's this QR code if you want to pull out your phones, just so you can keep the link stored away for future reference, and then consider whether you have time this semester as busy sophomores. Are you all sophomores? Give or take, yeah. To join a cool club. Is that big enough for people to scan? Yeah! We're having interest meetings on Thursday and Friday at 7 o'clock in GFS 111. It's going to be super, super fun. I'm really crazy excited. I hope any of you who would like to join are super crazy excited. If you're at all interested in game design or other aspects of game development, please join. You get merch. We have retreats. Yeah, other cool stuff. Thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you guys so much for your time. Appreciate it. And have a good semester. Woo.
Okay, so the first thing that we'll learn about today in class is Java classes. So we will learn about the difference between classes and objects. Then we will write a program together. So how many of you here drive a car? So what do we need to drive a car? What do you do to drive your car? Key. What else? What do you do with the key?
Throw it away.
So we turn the car on, we press the speeding pedal, we turn the steering wheel, we press the brake pedal when we want to stop. But do we know what happens inside the car? Most of the drivers don't know, and they don't need to know what happens inside the car. This is similar to objects and classes. So to drive a car, you need the accelerator pedal, the brake pedal, the steering wheel, and the ignition. But what actually happens when you turn the key in the ignition, most drivers don't know, but they don't need to know to be able to drive the car. This is the idea behind objects. The code that uses the object knows what the method will do, but it doesn't need to know how it does it. So an object is a high-level term for the idea behind a class. We need something to represent a car, and we create a class. A class is the actual implementation of an object. So this is the way we create a class, public class, then the class name. You can think about the class as a template or a blueprint. Once a class is created, you can create instances of the class, which will be variables. This is often referred to as an object as well. So we have an object of car. We have the name of the object here, and we initiate it here, a new car. Objects and intern classes can be described by two key features, data and methods. So for this class, we have two attributes, which are the fuel and the maximum speed. We have the methods, which we have the refuel, get fuel, set speed, get speed, and drive. The method of an object operates on the data that is part of the object or data that's passed into the method, and usually in both. If you have a method that doesn't operate in the data, and the data that is part of the class, you should think about why do you have it in your class. So let's have another example. We have a bank account object. What is the data that is associated with a bank account? What do you guys think? What kind of data do we need? Yeah. Bank balance, name, account number, what else? Maybe address, social security number. What are the functions or methods we can perform on a bank account? Deposit, withdraw, check balance. So these are the attributes or the variables of an object, and these are the methods. So we have an example here. If we want to create a class, we need to have the class name. We need to write class, then the class name. We have the attributes here. We have private and account number, private and PIN number, private double balance. We have the first method, public void set balance, double balance, balance, balance. So we will get the value here, and we will assign it to this object. For get balance, we will return the balance value to the in that method. We also have withdraw, double amount equals balance minus amount. So we will decrease the balance by this specific amount. Here we have our main function. We created an object of bank account. We set the balance to the 2,000. Then we printed the balance to the user. Then we withdrew the $100. So can anyone tell me what's the new balance here? $1,900. Do you have any question about this code? It's clear? Yeah.
Is the name included in the class? Like, is it
You can include the main in the class. That's fine. Okay. We also have access modifiers. There are 4 access modifiers in Java. If a variable method is declared public, what does this mean? It means that any other piece of code can access the variable or method. We also have private. If we declare something private, only the class in which that variable or method is declared can access it. We also have package. Package is the default, meaning that there is no identifier. Any class in the same package can access it. We have protected. Any class declared in the same package or who inherits from the class can access it. So which one we should use? We should hide the data using private and expose the necessary methods. We have another concept called encapsulation. A class is considered encapsulated if all the data is declared private. A class is considered fully encapsulated if all of the data is declared private, and we provide accessors or getters and manipulators, setters method for each piece of data. Manipulators are also called mutators. So is this class encapsulated or not? Why is it encapsulated?
The data is private.
All of the data is private. Is it fully encapsulated? Yes or no? No. Why? Yeah, we don't have a getter and setter for everyone, for every data point. So this is what we learned. We learned the difference between classes and objects, and we have an example of a class. Now we will implement a program together. So we will write a program that reads data from a user that presents employees' names and hourly rates. So we will get the employee name, the hourly rate, and we will calculate the annual salary. We will assume that an employee works for 50 weeks and he works for 40 hours per week. So this is the sample output. We will ask the user about how many employees does he have, and we will enter the name for each employee and the hourly rate. Then we will print out the annual salary. So Emily is here and she will show us how to write this code. Ooh.
Can you guys all see this fine, or should I make it bigger? A little bit bigger? Okay. What about this? Is that better? Okay, cool. So do you guys have Eclipse installed yet? No? Fantastic. So I'm going to be doing a code demo in Eclipse, so since you guys don't have it yet, obviously can't exactly type it, but feel free to take notes. A lot of it is the concepts are going to be the same as 104. So you probably want to take note of the syntax or any kind of nuances that are different from Java versus C++. So you're going to be installing Eclipse in your first lab. So if you haven't done that yet, don't worry about it. You can getting to it next week. But the idea of Eclipse is that it's an IDE. So if you took 104, you probably use something similar like a virtual machine to do your coding. So in here, this is Eclipse. This obviously here is the code I'll be having, and then on this side is all of my files. So for this session, I'm going to make a new file because we're making the salary class. So you probably want to do something like a Java class. Let's see if we can find one here. Java class. And then get to something like this. So I don't know if people in the back can see it that well, but the basic idea is asking you what's your class name, what kind of properties you should have, and if any packages you need to have. So in my case, I'm just going to call it a salary class because I don't need anything else. And then it'll show up on your left side here. So in my case, I made it inside this package called Lab 8 because it was from a previous semester, and then I made it in this class to make a new project. So that's on me, but later on you want to do your own project. So the first thing we want to do is write a public static void main because someone asked, what do we do with the main? So main is what runs when you click the little green button here to run your code. So when you click run, it'll look for a main and it'll run the code inside the main. So if you want to make sure that anything runs, I want to do this first. Static void main string args. Okay. You don't have to know what all of this means yet. I think as you move on through this course, you'll understand what static means, what the void is, and then why you have string and args. And so earlier from the lecture slides, we want to do something that first asks how many users we'll have. And then for each user, we'll want their name and amount in their bank, right, their salary. And then finally, we'll print out each user plus their salary. And so part of this is that we will need to have some kind of class to keep track of everyone's names and their salaries. So this idea behind an object, we don't want to just have free-floating numbers all around. We want to put it inside a class. So outside of the salary class, I'm actually going to make another class. I'm going to call it employee because employees have salaries. And then inside this employee class, we'll need probably some kind of variable to track their name and some kind of variable to track their salary. So let's make a public string name. And then for my salary, I probably want that to be private because not everyone should know how much you make and they shouldn't be able to change what amount you're making. So make a private and then double salary. And the reason why we do double is the salary could be a decimal point. It could be making like 50,025 cents. So we want to just be specific here. And then we'll write getters and setters. Are you guys familiar with getters and setters? Oh, questions? Why am I not?
Why don't you make it public?
Why did I make it public? So for the name, for the class, so by default it's just public. So if I'm doing a private class, I'm probably using that for some kind of inheritance. So in this case, I don't need to worry about inheritance. I'll just make the class public so it's easier to use. There's another question? Yeah.
The reason you didn't do it for employee?
It's public by default. So I could do this. It would be the same thing. Yes, Jack.
I disagree.
Okay, cool.
Because, so for, we all talk about access modifiers in a bit, but the idea is in Java, there's a convention going on where for every public class, you're supposed to put a public class in its own file. And then, the default visibility of classes, like without any modifiers is package visible. But, you know, at least for this assignment, or for this example, everything's in one package. So it doesn't matter if we put an employee in a different file, whatever you see, there's a red underline, and if you hover over it, it's going to tell you it should be in its own file.
Okay, that was my bad. You're correct there. If that didn't make any sense at all, don't worry about it. Usually when you put your class in new files.
It'll make sense after 30 minutes.
Yeah. I think this one by default will be public. Yeah.
Yes, if you don't put anything in the class.
Yeah. Okay, listen to Jack. So if that doesn't make any sense, the package is this thing right here. That's this package. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Is it possible to have a class and multiple packages?
Is it possible to have one class and multiple packages?
Yeah.
Sorry, what do you mean by one class and multiple packages?
So say at the top where you compare the package, like package lab 8, could you do like package lab 9 or something like that? And then
Okay, so the underlying thing about packages is that it's basically a folder in the source folder. So you can't have one file present in different folders. You can only have the copy of the same file in different folders, you know?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I don't know any situation where you want the same exact file in both packages.
Why do you need that?
Yeah, it would be a little bit odd.
It's a good question, though.
Any other questions? Yeah, don't worry if it's a little bit confusing. In your labs, we'll be going over this as well, like packages and making classes. Okay. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and do the getters and setters for the name and salary. So that's something that you've done in 104. So let's get this out. Public string get name. And then you'll just want to return the name. And then public void set name. And in this case, you want to take an input of string name, and then name is equal to s. And then you do the same thing for salary. Public double sal, get salary, return salary, and then public void set salary, and double s. Salary is equal to s. So, nothing too complicated here. Question over there?
What's the point of making name public if you're gonna make getters and setters for it anyway?
Yeah, that's a good question. You don't need to. I just think it's better convention in case you decide maybe you want to do a private later. as a general rule, it's nice to have it. You don't need to have it because, like you said, if it's public, you don't need it. Yeah. And there's a question in the back.
Let's have like auto setters and getters and auto void main and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think so. When you make your class, it'll have a bunch of questions and it'll ask you like, do you want to auto create the stuff? So it'll create the template for you.
Do we have to write public or private every time we instantiate a method or data, or can we write like public colon in C++?
Public colon. I think there's a shorthand. I don't think it's public colon though. The shorthand's probably a little bit different in Java.
That's in the header file, right?
For class in C++.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, the syntax will be a little bit different. Okay. Any other questions, syntax-wise? No? Okay. So now that we have, I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. Now that we have an employee class, we can use this object for our program. So the best way to get user input using some kind of scanner, you'll be doing that for assignment 1-2 when you ask for user input. So you probably want something like scanner s1 is equal to new scanner system.in. Okay. And then see the red squiggly. If you hover over the X on the left, it'll tell you what kind of error you're having. So this is just telling me that it can't resolve scanner to type, and that's because I haven't imported it. So I'm going to go ahead and import that using the first one here. So a quick way to import is Control, Shift, and O, and then it'll just auto-import everything you need. So if you want to use that shortcut, it's nice. So now that we have a scanner, we probably want to tell the user what we want from them, and then they can put in the input. So to print out, you'll be doing system.out.println, and that's different from C++. Yeah.
Like in 104 for C++, we had to import packages for string. We need to do that here in Java as well.
Not for string, no. But in this case, I imported the scanner class. So you still will have to import, but you don't have to import a string.
What is scanner?
Scanner is what you use to read user input. So in this case, you want to read from the system.in, which I'm assuming is systems.input, and that'll be what you type down in your console. So once I do this, I'll do an example of what it'll look like. Yeah.
Like, does it make it different for the base construction instead of system.in and something else?
I'm pretty sure you can put something different. I don't know if it's specifically for scanner. So there's also like buffered reader and then buffered input readers. So that you can read from wherever you want, and that can be different. If you only can read from system.in, which I don't think.
You can read from other stuff.
Yeah. You can read from other stuff.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
In like a string.
It's system.in like a stream. You could think of it like that. It would be some type of input stream for you to put in info. It'll show up in the console, that's the cool part. So it's specifically asking for input from your user. Yeah. So the first question you probably want to ask is, how many users do we have? Oops, can't spell. And then so if we want to get the input, we want to first set it to a variable, because we'll probably put in a number. So we can do int total is equal to s1 dot, and then it'll auto-populate. So this one's a little bit hard to see, but it's telling you all the different functions you could have for a scanner. So in this case, you can have like a hash code, a next int, a radix, next byte, etc. So we probably want an int from the user. And then just for testing's sake, we're going to do something like system.out.println and say there will be plus, and then total plus users. So this is like an error check. So I'm just going to read an input from what the user puts in. I'll just tell them what number I got out of it. So let's go ahead and run this. My laptop is a little bit slow, so hopefully it doesn't take too long. Right. Okay, so now in the console tab here, it'll ask you how many users you have. And let's say we have 4. And it tells you there will be 4 users. Yeah.
Putting a number, you put some garbage value like a name.
When you put a garbage value, let's find out. So how many users put X? It'll say you have an input mismatch. And so the problem is that here we're explicitly telling the program that the next value that'll come in will be an integer. So you put something different, it'll tell you there's an error. And for your homework 1 assignment, you will have to check for that. For example, if you can only put in the numbers 1 through 6, and then someone puts in 7, you want to tell them that's outside the range. Or if you do 1 to 6 and they put in the letter X, you want to tell them, like, we can't convert this. Yeah. Yeah, if I remember what a CN statement is, it asks for the user input, so yes.
But next in specifies it to be an int. Whereas CN, I think, takes it as a string.
Yeah. CN, I think, reads everything and interprets
I know,
it.
but it's a string towards at the end. So you might be thinking about next line. So the next line just takes everything typed in that line and converts it into a string. And you can do whatever you want.
If there was stuff before the int in S1, would we still take the int?
Yeah, because
Wait,
what do you mean? Before?
like if it was ABC 14, would we just take 14?
No, you'll get an exception because it takes in the line as a whole.
Yeah, if you do something like this, it'll be an error. So don't do that.
Another
This is another question?
So if you tried something like as the input, if you wrote like x4, would it take the 4 as the int or?
Like X4, like this?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, so this will hold you with string concatenation. Like if you do like AB and then +1, it'll just say AB1 as a string. The same way I think that was covered in 104. If you do numbers as strings, like a string 1 plus a string 2, it'll interpret as 12. Because it just combines 1 plus 2. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, so this will be pretty important for your homework assignment too, because you want to get user input. So now that I know that if I type in a number like 4, it'll actually say you have 4 users, I can get rid of this line, so I don't have to do error checking. And then now I want a loop. So for each user that I have, I want to know their name and their salary. So this is pretty basic. You want to have some kind of for loop. So for int I is equal to 0, I is lesser than total, I plus plus, I want to do something in here. So this same syntax as C++, I think. I'm pretty sure. Okay, great. I haven't done C++ in a while, but the syntax idea is the same. You start from 0, you go up to your total, and then I++ every time. And then so inside my for loop, I want to do the same thing. I want to ask for what the name is, and then I want to ask what their salary is. So chances are I'm going to need a new employee object every time I do this, because I want to store the data in a new employee every time. So inside my loop, I'm just going to create a new employee. So this is using the employee class that we wrote earlier. And then here we'll just ask something like, what is, let's use some kind of number so we know which employee we're on. So what is employee plus I plus 1, and then apostrophe S, zoom out a little bit. So I'm doing I plus 1 since we're starting at 0. So it doesn't make sense to ask for employee 0. So this way you'll start at 1. And then we probably want some kind of user input now too. So let's do string name is equal to whatever the user puts in. This time we want a string. So if you look here, it auto-populates you next and next line. So we're going to go ahead and do next line here. And then whatever the user inputs, we want to save that to the employee name. So we have the setter function, so it can do e.setName, and it's going to be equal to whatever the user put in. So in this case, name. And I want to do the same for the salary. What is employee number I plus 1 plus salary? And in this case, we want a double. So double salary is equal to S1 dot, and look, it tells me to use next double. And the E dot set salary is equal to this. Okay. Yeah.
Next and next line.
I knew you were going to ask that because I can't remember off the top of my head because I just forgot. Next and next line. I think one of them reads in the new line character and the other one doesn't. Is that right?
Next might be like a character.
Yeah. Yeah, question.
I think next reads up to white space and next line reads up to a new line character.
Yeah, so next reads to the white space and then next line reads to the new line character. Yeah. If you Google it, so a lot of this class, if you Google things, you'll just find out. Yeah.
Not running into a problem with instantiating the new employee object in the for loop, or is it because it's new that it continues on?
You will have a problem, but not the one you're thinking of. I think I couldn't hear the last half of what you said, but you will have a problem since this will create new employee every time, and we're not storing it everywhere. Yeah.
So does new return a pointer to an object, or like an object itself?
So this line here.
Yeah.
So this just means you're creating a new employee object. So I think in C++ you guys had static and dynamic allocation. You can think of it as just always doing dynamic, because I think dynamic you always had the new keyword, right?
There are no pointers in Java. Memory deallocation is handled by the JVM, so you don't have to delete anything.
Yeah, that is a nice thing to have. Yeah, question?
Do something like employee E and that's it. And not
Like just doing, like just like that?
not like using the new operator to
Like this?
Yeah, and then using that.
Yeah, so, well, so like this is a duplicate first. Yeah. So do something like this, it'll just auto-instantiate to null. It's the same thing as doing this. Yeah. So then if you want to do like e1.setName or something, you might have an error because it'll say like, oh, you're trying to do this function on a null object. The good thing about Java is that descriptions are they're a little bit nicer to you. Like in C++, you'll have a bunch of things and you don't really know where you went wrong. If you hover over the left side where the little X is, it'll tell you specifically what's wrong. Like if I do something like n instead of name, it'll tell me like n can't be resolved to a variable. No. After you click the little green play. And then it'll compile.
If you're asking about the IDE, then yes. The IDE is constantly compiling your code and looking for errors so that it highlights it for you.
Yeah, but if you
does it
don't
in the
run it,
background.
it won't update.
And that's why an IDE consumes more battery life than like a notepad or something.
Okay. So right now if we do something like this, let's say we have 3 users. Then for each user, I'm not sure why it's doing that. Oh, I know why this is happening. Duh. Okay, let's just create a new employee number, which is equal to I plus 1, because of the concatenation issue. Let's see, that's weird. Yeah. Jack, do you want to help me out? Jack, can you pull up the slides? Okay. It's not waiting here for some reason.
Oh, I shall explain why
Yeah.
it is not waiting.
I think I know why. It's probably because of the int here.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Yeah.
let me explain real quick.
That's annoying.
Sorry. What? Yes, I'll go up and explain.
Yeah.
My time to shine. All
I
right.
want to fix this.
So when we do, I read on Medium and I wrote an article about this, which sadly has 0 claps as of now. So what happens when you do when you type in the console is that when you type like Jeffrey Miller and you hit enter, what actually is in the buffer is Jeffrey Miller and then /n with the new line character. And if you do next int, it's not going to consume the new line character at the very end. So when you do next line after next int, it's going to see that new line character in the buffer, and it thinks that you pressed enter again. In reality, it's just a leftover from next int. So my advice would be to either do a next line call after every next int or next double next whatever call, or just use next line all the time, and then like what Emily's doing here, parse it into integer double whatever later.
Yeah. Darn, I was hoping we wouldn't have this issue.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, question?
How robust the parse int function?
String constructor, string.
This one? Yeah, that was Wait. Why does it not work for me? Hello?
Just talk really loudly.
Wait, what? Oh, there we go. Okay, what was the question? How robust is this one? So you're saying how does it handle errors and that stuff? Okay, so it doesn't. So you see during compile time, it's fine if you don't do like error handling, which we'll get to. But it throws runtime exceptions, which you'll have to watch out for. It's probably, I can't remember. It might be that might be number format or input mismatch. There's like
input mismatch.
Yeah. There's like a whole category of them depending on what you input. But yeah, it is something you have to watch out for, and especially at least I don't know. Nobody I know is perfect, so always assume that the user will make mistakes when they're typing stuff. Anyone? Yeah.
Can you write down the other way of doing it?
The other way?
This one?
You said one way is we could parse it, and another way is we could do the next line after
What is this?
So the other would just be literally doing.
Yeah, we can hear you on the microphone.
Oh, okay.
So that way just consumes the new line character, because you'll have an extra one. I have to redo that. Yeah, so now the idea is actually convert parse double. Okay. And then I1 and I1, I1. Yeah, so this is what you're going to do is you're going to be reading it as a string. You're forcing it to be a string, so even if you put a number, it'll be a string. And then when you parse it, it'll get the number out of it. So the problem with doing it this way is now the user can put an X or some kind of outside the numerical bounds, and then you'll have to manually check that, oh, I can't actually do this conversion, because you'll get another error, a different error if you do this now. So it's something to keep in mind if you do it this way. Okay, see, hopefully that fixes it.
And if we do it the other way, we don't have to convert to
Right, because you'll be reading in the number, and then you're creating something else to consume the new line character.
So would that way be better?
You could say it's better and that you don't have to do error checking, but I would say it's less efficient because you have to do a new line every single time. Jack, what's your thoughts?
Yes, I would say they're the same because they both throw runtime exceptions.
Yeah.
So the exceptions are good. So what double next int is doing behind the scene is basically what this is doing. They're going to throw the same type of exceptions, but Eclipse or your ID is not gonna it's not gonna tell you because they're runtime exceptions. So they don't know there's gonna be an exception until it's runtime or whatever. It's not a compile time exception.
Yeah. You also have to physically type it one more time. You could do something like this where in here instead of doing the variable, can just do like that, and then you don't have to write this line. So in this way, you're getting the variable and then converting it on the spot.
Whatever works for you. Everyone has their own coding style. Yeah.
So is it int or double? Whatever you need.
How do you check? So, are you saying that you don't? Are you saying that you can either take in an int or a double, and then you want to determine what it is based like during runtime, or?
Game. So
Yeah.
you click like 1, 2, 3. Or like for the salary.
So you're saying what if the user inputs like a decimal or whatever? Yeah. It's gonna I think it's gonna throw in runtime exception. So it's
that is if you're doing the next line within the parse int rem.
So it's something called a try catch, which we will talk about later. Yeah. Basically, try this action and then catch this error if it happens, and do something about it.
Okay. So this works because we ran it, and then you can see like it asks for your name, and then asks for the salary, and then goes to the next employee. So Right now, the problem is that every time you have a new employee, it'll overwrite it and you're not actually saving it to anything. So we'll need some kind of object to save all of the employees. So I gone ahead and made an array list here. So it's almost like the vector class that you have in C++. So in this case, I'm saying you have an array list of employees, and it takes in employee objects. And so now every time I finish asking for a name and a salary, I'll go ahead and put it in my employees array list. And so once I'm done with that, then I'll iterate through the employee array list. So I is equal to 0, I is equal to employees dot size, I plus plus. So this way, now I'm iterating through the array list for all employees. And I'll just go ahead and print out the information we have. So in this case, we want to do something with the employee name first. So employees get at I plus, so that's the name, dot get name has a salary of, let me put this here, and then we want the salary, get I dot get salary. Okay. So all this loop does is for every employee that we have, it'll print out the name and then their salary. So just go ahead and run this. So 3 users, Reem, let's say it's 100,000. Then Jack, who makes... Is that going to be more? No, it's going to be less. And then there's me, who makes 1 less. And it'll tell you what your salaries are. You want to do annual salary? Okay. Yeah, so another way to do this, if you ask for their hourly salary instead, let's specify hourly salary. Then you want to get their salary and then multiply by how many hours?
50 by 40.
Yeah, it's like 40 hours in a week. And then, just for simplicity, we'll say there's 50 weeks in a year. Let's say you have 2 weeks of vacation time. So this way, now we're going to be doing the hourly salary. Yeah. Yeah. So we want to do something like that. Okay, so now we can do hourly salary and we can compute on the spot. So now I'll just say we have 2 users. Reem, let's say she makes 20 an hour, and then Jack makes 10 an hour. So now to multiply it out for you, for what the salary is. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Data type list employees, you got like question.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an array list. Yeah.
When you use the public static void main class, so you put it inside the salary class, not the employees class. When which class we put it in, or does it have to be inside another class?
So this public static void main is what runs when you click the little green play button. So it's wherever you want your code to run. In this case, I want to run in salary. I think the general convention is the class. So the file is called salary, so your class is also called salary. So the general convention that you want to have your main in that salary class. But of course, Jack has a different opinion.
How do you know? Okay, so Eclipse and IDEs and Java in general, they specifically look for this. So even if you change this args to like args1, the program's not going to run because it's not going to recognize this entry point. This entry point, so static basically means global, which means it's accessible anywhere, but you'll never need to call main because when you run the program in Java, the JVM runs the program from the entry point. And this thing can be anywhere, in any class. You can have like its own class called public class main and then just have a main method in it. It's okay. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. The general convention, keep it in whatever it's called.
It depends on your code design and yeah.
So thank you, Emily. Yes. Just to emphasize 2 things. So the default access modifier is package. So if you don't add public or private, it will be package. And someone asked how to, let me,
You can add the $sign when you fancy.
The other thing, we shouldn't have two public classes in one file. So each file should have one public class that contains the main function. Okay, so someone asked how to automatically generate the getters and setters. So if I delete this, I can do right click, then source, then generate getters and setters, and specify the variables that I want to generate the getters and setters for them. And they are here. Now we will move to our next topic, which is packages. Okay. So a package in Java is a logical arrangement of code. Programmers put their classes in packages so that makes more sense to them. A package corresponds to a directory on the computer, so you can think of arranging code in packages similar to arranging files in directories. So it's just a way to organize your code. So you put your code in directories. If a class in a package named edu.usc, the dev class file must be in folder named usc, which must be in folder named edu. In the edu directory, there must be a usc directory, and in that directory is where the CSCI201.class file must be. To compile your program from the command line from the directory that contains the edu directory, type java c edu usc CSCI201.java. So to compile from the terminal or from the command line, we will use java c. To run your program from the command line from the directory that contains the edu directory, type java edu.usc CSCI201. So we have the package name here, we have the program, and to run it, we need first to compile it. We will use the java c. Then to run it, we will use Java. I will show you an example here. So we have the edu folder, we have the usc folder, and we have cs1.java. So we just have the package name here, we have the class name, and we will print a class is in a package. So from your terminal, I will go to the folder in which my package is. So now on this folder, I will list the files, and I can see the edu package. So to compile it, I will just type java c and the package name, the other folder name, then the Java file. So how do we know that it's compiled? We will have the .class file here. So we generated CSCI201.class. Then to run it, we will simply we will just use the Java command. So it's printed out the class and package. So we know that we compiled and we ran our program from the terminal. Yeah.
What is the difference between package and
It's the same thing. You can think about it as a way to organize it. Okay. So I think you will always, not always, but most of the part you will be using Eclipse, so you won't be run your compile or run your program from the terminals. We are just showing you another way to do that. And let's talk about the file input output now. So we will talk about file input output, then Jack will show us a program. So in computer we have two types of storage. We have volatile memory and non-volatile memory. Can anyone tell me what's the difference? Yeah. Yeah, for volatile memory, when the power is off, we lose the data, nothing is there. For the non-volatile memory, when we switch the power off, the data is still there. It's saved in either in your hard drive or your external storage. And there is another difference, the speed of accessing the data. So accessing data from the CPU is the fastest way, followed by main memory is a little bit slower. Accessing it from the hard drive is slower, and we have the external storage is the slowest. So the slowest way to access data is from the external storage. This is an actual computer diagram. We have the CPU slot, we have the main memory, we have expansion slots to add more memory, and we have the hard drive port. So in Java, we want to write and read from files. We want our data to persist in the hard drive. So we want to write them in files. This is an example of how to read from file, and Jack will show us how to code it, but we will go through it. So to read from a file, we need a buffer reader, a file reader, file not found exception, and IO input-output exception. So we need to import these libraries. We will create a class test. We have our main function. The main function is the first thing that will run in our program. We will create a file reader, and we will create a buffer reader. Then we need to have a try block. What does try mean? So when we surround the code by try block, we tell the IDE to try running these functions. But something might go wrong, and we want to catch them in the catch block. So in the try, we're saying there might be potential errors or exceptions, and in the catch, we tell the program how to handle them. And usually we have a finally block. The finally block is optional, and it will run whether your try block runs successfully or not. So we created the file reader. We specify the file name that we want to read from. Then we will wrap it in a buffer. Then we will read line by line. So we say string line BR, we read using the buffer, read line. And we will loop until we reach null. Null means that there is no more lines to read. So system.out.print line, and we keep iterating by reading the next line. Line equals br.read line. This try block has two potential exceptions. The first one is file not found exception. So if you specify a file that you don't have it, this will create an error. So we're telling the system, we're telling Java, if you encounter this type of error, just print out the error. Another type of error is system that is the input-output error, and similarly we will output the error to the user. Then we have the finally block. So if the buffer reader is not null, try to close it, and this might cause an error. So just catch it by printing out the error message to the user. Then we want to close the file reader, and similarly it might cause an error, and we will catch it here. It will be more clear when we implement it together. We also have the concept of relative and absolute file names. Can anyone tell me what's the difference? So a relative file name does not contain the full path. it's relative to the relative file name will be relative to the directory from which your program being run. So if you have test.txt, this means that this file exists in the same folder in which your program exists. If you have desktop test.txt, it means that desktop and your program exist in the same place, and desktop contains test.txt. On the other hand, we have the absolute file name, which contains the full path to the file. For example, we have cuser, jmiller, desktop, text.txt. The location of the program is irrelevant. If the program is run on a different computer, we will need the same absolute path if it's hard-coded. Now we will see how to write how to write to the file. So we need to have a file writer, a print writer, and input-output exception. So we will import these libraries. We'll create a class test, public static void main string args. We'll create our file writer and our print writer. We will have our try block. We will create the file writer. This is the name of the file that we want to create. And we will have a print writer. We will wrap the file writer and the print writer. This is the first line we want to print. This is the second line. And we have bw.flush. What does this do? So to improve the speed of writing, the OS will buffer writes to disk. If the buffer is not full, the data written into the stream hasn't been written to disk. To flush the current content of the buffer, we can flush on the stream. So you can think about the buffer, which we have here, which is BW here, as a temporary storage. When the storage is full, we will write to the disk. If it's not full, you won't write to the disk. How to enforce it to write? Using a flush. So when you say flush, you tell the operating system to take whatever in this temporary storage and write it to the disk. Is it clear or not? Okay, so yeah.
Does it clear the buffer as well after it writes to?
Sorry.
Does it clear the buffer?
Yes.
Like when you do dot flush.
Yeah.
It does clear the buffer.
So it's clear the buffer. It writes it to the disk. Yes.
Is the buffer in memory?
Is the buffer in memory? Yeah, I think so. So we have the buffer. A buffer is a temporary memory. When it's full, it will write to the disk. But sometimes it doesn't get full, and we want to enforce it to write to the disk. So we just use flush. Is it clear now?
Contents already like in the buffer, but when you try to flush the current contents, like do those like old contents like also get flushed with the current contents?
I think when you do flush, the old contents doesn't exist anymore. Like it's already written to the buffer to the disk. Then this will cause an input-output exception. We will handle it using the catch. Then we have the finally block, which will always be run. We will try to close the buffer, and we will try to close the file writer. So let's write a program so we will write a program together. Jack will help us to write it, and hopefully it will be more clear to you when we write it. So the program prompts the user to enter a number of how many copies of a file to make. Then we will read this file and make copies of that file. You had a question?
When you write to the disk, does it overwrite anything that was previously in the file?
Sorry?
So if you have some other stuff in the file and then you flush it, is it gonna just be like whatever was, is the file just gonna contain whatever was in the buffer that you flushed, or is it gonna append to?
It depends, but I think it will append. I think there are many options. Sometimes whatever in the file will be deleted and you'll create a new file. Sometimes you can append. It depends on the options that you select. Any more questions? So Jack will show us how to write this program.
Yeah.
Make sure you use it because people come back.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure if we have time for this. 20 minutes. How does it plug in? This one?
Yeah, just you can use mine.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thanks for coming today. I appreciate it. Okay, so about caching that we talked about, flushing, sorry. Think of it as flushing your toilet, okay? I'm not joking. So if you flush your toilet, so if you have, I don't know what you have in your toilet, but you know, whatever you have in there, when you flush it, what happens to it? It disappears, right? It goes from your toilet into the drain. So that's what happens. It goes from the buffer to the actual file, and nothing's left in the buffer, and you know, there's that. And also in Windows, I don't know if you've ever messed with it. So for your USB drives, you have like multiple options. So write caching policy, but so removal policy, there's quick removal. What it does is that whenever data is being written onto a disk, it flushes it immediately, so that you can just unplug it anytime without data loss. But if you use better performance, there's going to be a write caching policy. So it's going to cache the data, and then it's going to write it. It's only going to write it to the disk when the buffer is full to improve performance. Yeah. Just remember to flush. Oh, I don't have to, right?
No, you don't.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so let's write some stuff. So file new project, and of course we want a Java project. Name, I'll call it. You can name it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Okay. So now we want to make a new class. I'll just call it main. It doesn't matter. And then I want to check this so it generates the main method for me. There we go. Can I? Oh, right. Hang on. There we go. And you may have noticed I'm in the default package, and the default package is no package. That's not a great way of doing things, but it's doable, I think, up till the third homework assignment. Then you might start running into issues. So always have packages. I just don't have it for now. Okay. Yeah. So we have 20 minutes. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so here we're gonna write a file copier, which reads from an input file, and then you can choose how many output copies do you want. It's gonna output all of those. So let me create a new class called file copier, and I do not want the main method in there because it's just a class. I have the main in the main class. You can have the main anywhere you want. I just chose to put them in different places. So the logic of our program goes like this. We want to ask the user what's the name of the file that we're trying to copy, and then we're going to ask the user how many copies do you want, and then we're going to copy the file. So why don't we start off by doing, let's declare something called, sorry, it's called, we're going to declare a public function. It's going to be void. We're just calling it run, and calling run will just run the entire thing. So in main, what we do is, so the type first, and then the name equals new file copier. We're using the default constructor, which does nothing. And then if you want to run it, we just do file copier.run. That's all there is. Should look pretty familiar if you're coming from C++. I have great faith in your 104 education. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask the user what's the name of the file that we're trying to get. So let's do system.out.println. And you might have noticed, why is it that my Eclipse, for those of you with Eclipse, why is it that Jack's Eclipse is so much better than mine, because when I type system, you see it just comes up, and when you type it, nothing comes up. So this is basically because I turned up the Eclipse auto complete thing, so you can do those in preferences and Java editor content assist. So in here, just type in all the letters and symbols so that whenever you type anything, it's going to automatically suggest it for you, like all the other IDEs out there. Okay. So print line. So let's ask the user, what's the file you would like to copy? And actually, I want the user to answer it on the same line. So I'll do print instead of print line. So what print line does is it's going to add a new line character at the very end. So the next line is going to start on a new line, but we want the users to answer like right after this. And then, of course, to read user input, we're going to need a scanner. And by the way, feel free to stop me or if I'm going too fast, because I'm not sure if we have enough time for everything, so I'm just trying to get a message as much as possible. Okay, so next up, we're going to do a scanner. And if you did the autocomplete trick that I did, Eclipse is going to handle the import automatically. So yeah, it's a pro gamer move, that's what I call it. There we go. And then scanner. And someone asked, can you put anything else in scanner? And I would say that, yes, you could. Scanner takes any kind, I would say any kind, but so here, this is my Medium article. So you see scanner can also take a filter input stream. So what I'm doing here is that it's actually one of the hidden dangers of scanner. So whenever, I mean in C++ and whatever, and also from the examples Reem went through, you can see at the very end when we opened a file reader, we opened a buffered reader, we always close it at the very end. So you might be tempted to think, well, you know, whatever resource that I open, I should just close them after I'm done using it, and I can just open it again, right? But not if we're doing this, because the problem is that system.in, so the system input stream, is opened by the JVM when the program is launched. And then it's supposed to be closed by the JVM too. So this is all fine, scanner binding itself to system.in, but if you do scanner.close here, it's also going to close system.in, and there's no way of opening that again unless you restart the program. So just leave scanner open, and even better, have a global instance of scanner. Let's do, actually we don't even need it to be public. We can do private, let's make it static, you know what? Private scanner, equals new scanner, system.in. So that way, we have like universal global access. I mean, I know in C++, you know, they say global variables bad, this bad, that bad. But you know, for Java, this is fine. This is actually a good way of doing it because, yeah, people get frustrated, and then it's one of those things that if you know, you know, but if you don't know, you're kind of clueless. Okay. So the next thing we do, of course, is to ask for user input. So next line. And of course, we're going to store it into, I would call it string input. Input string, oh, that all suggests is really aggressive there. Okay. And then this input string, actually I'll call it file name because that's what it is, file name. So now we got the file name. What we want to do is that we also want to ask the users, let's see. We also want to ask the users how many, yeah.
How can you name your variable the same thing as like scanner? Is there no keyword?
What do you mean, this one?
Yeah.
What do you mean, here or here?
Like it's the same name as
yeah, because this, oh, you're saying the type?
Yeah.
Oh, this is lowercase.
Oh.
Yeah. So, no, I didn't mean to, like, look, this is lowercase. But it's, yeah, you can do that. You can do that. Any questions? That was a good one. Okay. Okay, so next up, we want to ask the user, I'm not strictly going by the books. I'm doing it I'm switching it up. So next up, we want to ask the user, you know, how many copies of the file do you want? Print. And by the way, because we're still on the same line, we want to do system.out.print line. And you can just do a print line by itself. It's just going to start a new line. That's what it does. And then we want to ask, how many copies of the file do you need? And then we're going to do string. We're actually going to do int number of copies. And then let's do integer dot, and keep in mind, so the difference between integer and int is that integer is what's considered as a simple object in Java, and int is a primitive type. And also, I think that actually that makes a huge difference when it comes to string comparisons. And this, like, people get tripped over this a lot, and that's also, I don't blame them, because Java is kind of weird in this respect. So let me comment all these out for now, because I think this is really important. This file copier thing is basically like a rehash of what Reem went through in the lecture slides. So I think you guys can kind of take a look at that on your own. But what I'm going to say here, I think, is really important because people get frustrated all the time. So let's say we have string. Let's actually, what is it? String a equals a string. Okay. Scanner.next line, and then I'm going to do string b string. Scanner.next line. I'm not sure why it's, oh, there we go. Okay, so we're not going down the alphabet any further. That's it. Okay? All right, sorry. Okay, so normally when you do string comparisons, I don't know why some of you are laughing. Oh, I don't know. So normally when you do string comparisons, you expect to do this, right? So if a string equals b string, and then let's do system.out. Print line, let's say same, and then else. And by the way, something really cool that I want to tell you guys, you can also use the error stream, which would make your output red. So error.println different. Okay, someone tell me what's gonna someone tell me if I type in the same input for both next lines, what's gonna happen here? Are they gonna be the same or different? Let's try running this. And I hope I'm right, otherwise I'm gonna look like it. Okay. Oh, that's the wrong project. That's the wrong project. Public static void. Wait, why isn't this running? What? Yeah, for some reason it's not running. What's going on here? What? Oh, it is running. I just didn't see it. It's hidden. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, there we go. Let's run that again. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna type in Jeff for the first one, and then Jeff for the second one, and you see they're different. But wait, Jeff is Jeff, right? Jeff is Jeff, Jeff. So why is it different? So because, as you can see here, if I do int something, you see it's in purple, bold, double, purple, bold, char, same thing. So if they're purple and bold, it means, and then they're lowercase, it means that they're primitive types. But the problem is, string doesn't look like that, String is uppercase and is thin, is normal, it's not bold. Why is that? So string, as I said, is a simple object in Java. So what that means is that when I'm doing this, I'm not comparing the contents of the string. What I'm doing is that I am asking Java, are they the same object? Which they aren't, because I created them. So this is, although the contents are the same, but they're not actually the same object. So what we want to do is a string dot equals b string, and then now if you run this, it's gonna fix that. Let's do Jeff again, and they're gonna be the same now. Sorry?
B string equals A string, and then you had A string equals B string.
It's the same thing.
Oh, you're saying if I do this? Sorry. Are you saying if I do this?
And then you have like the other.
The double equals, right? Well, let's try it.
Unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's the same one. Okay. All right. Okay, so we have 7 minutes. So what I'll actually do is that I will actually go over the code that Reem went over in more detail. Because, it looks so scary, there's like 38 lines or something, but actually the core of reading in stuff and writing stuff, there are only 4 or 5 lines. All the other stuff, they're just formalities that you have to follow. Okay? So let's make a new, let's not make a new one, because it's going to take up too much time. Let's delete all this. Yeah. Let's keep, should we keep the scanner? Yeah, okay. Let's just do that in main. You know what? Let's do that in main. Okay. So to read in a file, we use what's called a file reader. And file reader either takes in the file object. You can see here. You can see there are all those different things, and what we're doing is we're using the string. So it takes in the string. So let's call it test.text or whatever. Okay, and then you can immediately see there's a red underline saying that unhandled exception. So what it means is that this line is going to has the potential to throw an error, and we have to handle that. And so we can either, there are 2 ways of handling it. We can either surround it with try catch, so you try it and then you catch it, or you can just like many other problems in life, just throw it to some other person, right? You can also add throws to your function signature, but we're not going to do that. So this is our file read. So this is how we read in a file. This is literally how you read in a file. Load a file. And then next, you need something called a buffer reader, and that takes in an input stream. And what file reader does is actually it converts this file into a stream that Java can use, that buffer reader can use. So let's just feed this into the constructor. And you can see it's probably going to, it's not going to complain. Okay. Okay, so now we're ready to read the file. Okay. So we're going to do string line equals line string. Okay. br.readline. So, that's buffer reader.readline. So what it does is that it reads the first line from the input stream. So you see there's another red underline saying that now we have to handle an I/O exception. An I/O exception is basically, I/O stands for input output. So anytime you're dealing with input and output streams, chances are you're going to have to handle this. So let's add a catch clause. And if you don't want your code to be so verbose, there's another pro gamer move here. You can just do or I/O exception, and that's gonna. Oh yeah, or I/O exception actually already covers file not found, so you only have to do one. Yep. And then while I'm assuming everyone knows what a while loop is, so I'm not going to explain it. So while this line isn't null. So why do I do this? So if the file only has one line. If the file only has one line, then after this will be null. But if the file doesn't have any lines, this will be null to begin with. So we won't even go into the while loop. So let's do, so what we're trying to do here is literally just printing out whatever's in the file line by line. Okay? Oh my gosh. Line string. Okay. That's, that's self-explanatory. And then we're going to do line string equals buffer reader.readline again, so we're advancing on to the next line. So as I was saying, if the file doesn't have any lines, it's empty, then this is going to be null. So it's never going to go into the while loop because it is null. But if the file only has one line, then this is not going to be null. So the while loop, we're going to go into the while loop. We're going to print the first line. But then when we advance on to the second line, we're gonna hit this, and then we're going to try to read the next line, but the next line is null, so we're going to exit out of the while loop. All right? That's literally it for reading from files. It's that simple. And then, of course, there's a lot of other stuff where, so there's something called the finally block. So the finally block executes at the very end. So what we do in the finally block is usually some cleanup work. So, we opened our file reader, we opened our buffer reader. So what we want to do is we want to close them. All right? But, there's a problem because I can't, because it's not within the scope of this finally block. Because the scope of all these code, they're in the try block, not the catch block, not the finally block. So what we can do is we can move the declaration of those to somewhere like outside of, we can do this. and then file reader equals this, and then we can do this. I'll just copy instead. So this way we have access to those variables in the finally block. See, we can do that. And this is a special case for buffer reader. So when you have a buffer reader that takes another input stream, you only have to close the buffer reader, and then the close method of buffer reader will call the close method of the enclosing input stream. So in the slides we did both, but here we're just going to do one. And usually, and in the slides, we're being really careful. We're checking if this is null, if the buffer reader is null or not. If it's null, then we don't do anything. We can do that too. Checking for null is really easy, but I don't think, I'm not sure how it can be null in this case, but let's do it anyways. And let's just do, what is it, red? Oh, okay, dot close. And it's really annoying because, oh, okay. May not be initialized. Do I have to? Yeah. Little things. Okay. Yeah, so this thing itself throws another exception. So, yeah. It's not very pretty. Usually in your homework assignments, it's okay. I shouldn't say this. But it's okay if you don't do this. But just know that there's going to be resource leaks, and it's not the best practice. Sorry, which try, which, are you talking about this?
Statement like to determine like if the buffer reader is now.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't see how it's going to be null, but it's in the slide, so I'm just going to have it here. Because I declare it as null here. If for whatever reason, which I'm not sure what the reason is, but I actually don't think it's ever going to be null because, everything here is going to happen probably. Oh, actually, yeah, if the file doesn't exist, then it's probably not going to get to this line, so this is going to be null. That's what.
You're using the try.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
If it throws exception, like it wouldn't like execute the close. Like, why do you need an if statement?
Oh, like, Emily, when does the finally block? Does it always execute?
Yeah, finally always executes.
Yeah.
So that'll happen no matter what. So even if you had an exception earlier, or if you didn't, that will still happen. So just a safe way of actually.
Yeah, because I get what you're asking. Because normally, if we want to do cleanup, we can just do it outside of that, right? Because that makes more sense. Okay, so when an exception happens, the program doesn't just quit. It goes into the catch block. It's like when you get an F on the test, you don't just die, right? You handle your emotions, do whatever, and then you move on. So that's what's happening here, right? So we're handling it in here just by printing the stack trace, and then after we handle the whatever exception, we move on. Okay, we're actually out of time. Thank you for coming. Yeah, the code is available on Blackboard, and if you have any questions, go on Piazza. I'll be the one answering in like 5 minutes. Yeah. So ask questions on Piazza. Everything's going to be on Blackboard. This is recorded, so.
This concludes CSCI201 on Wednesday, January 15th, 2020.